history. Something interesting. Anybody want to share? Yes.
Name again?
Start with your name.
My name is Lola. My dear partner here, Jason, shared with me that in Tarpon Springs there is...
No.
That's not what I was going.
Is it nature?
Yeah.
The shore?
Don't say the stuff I'm talking about. And he knows those histories.
Oh.
I knew I heard him somewhere.
No spoilers.
Should know.
Okay, besides any spoilers, any community happenings that they learned on a tour previously. Yes?
I happened to went to the Legacy 6, the Pioneers, the 6 firemen that integrated the St. Pete's Fire Department.
Oh, yeah. So I think there was a news story about that recently.
Yeah, they had a ceremony at Mahaffey.
Awesome.
Last week or week before.
That's great. That hits near and dear to my heart. All the men in my family are firemen for Hillsborough County. So my dad, my brother, my cousins, my uncle, they all went the fireman route. The girls went to school. Got to the months. So. Anybody else? One more? Anybody else learn anything else about Pinellas County Black history during the time of segregation, Jim Crow, anything else? Yes?
2 or 3 years ago, I learned about the problems with access for Black people on the beaches.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there's a great documentary about it.
Yes, I think I've seen the same documentary. So the way he's saying that, many of you may already know because you already know Dr. Hillary Van Dyke, but those that don't, she did a nice documentary about Black people and their relationship with water.
Talk about that?
Yeah, she's gonna talk about that. So she's up here doing this part too. So that's why she's like interacting, and she's supposed to be speaking today. Sit in the corner and just think.
Wait, I got a fact.
Yes, go ahead.
Florida's Juneteenth is not in June. It's May 20th.
Mm-hmm. Yes, May 20th.
That's when they found out. They were...
Right. And specifically in Tampa Bay, ours is May 6th, 1864. So full year before Juneteenth. But the fun fact about that is everywhere was emancipated before Juneteenth because that was the last place. But the Union soldiers came here, rode into Tampa Bay, May 6th, 1864. The night of May 5th. But by the morning light, joy cometh in the morning light. That's what happened. They were free. Technically. So the B.E.A.T of Tampa Bay stands for, it's an acronym, the Black Engaging Academic Talks of Tampa Bay. And the reason why we wanted to name it that is because we wanted to start having more conversations about Black history. We know you guys see the newspaper articles and you see all those things, but you want to have conversations about it with people that have the same interests as you, right? So we wanted to create that space. In fact, next week, because I know every time we talk about Black history in Tampa, it's the Jackson House. The Jackson House, I don't care what you're talking about, they're going to bring up Jackson House. So next month, we're bringing somebody from the Jackson House Foundation to come speak to us over in Tampa. We're just trying to nail down a date right now. And so we named it that because we wanted to just have more talks, more engaging talks, bring speakers that are scholars in the field or that know a lot about the topic. So last time we had the Black history of Waimaama. Anybody familiar with Waimaama? Mm-hmm. So Waimaama down like just a little bit south of Tampa. There was a whole community out there, white, Black community, and there was a Black community that has not really been highlighted. And there was a woman named Miss Jackie Brown that was doing a lot of research, and she discovered there were a lot of Black high schools down here, and they never got their diploma, they never got the recognition, but they did the work. So she has been, pounding the ground, pounding the door at Hillsborough County schools, like, y'all need to give these people their recognition. So they're actually talking to her to get things running with that. So without further ado, I am going to 7 o'clock on the dot. I'm sorry. Dr. Hillary Van Dyke, Dr. Hillary M. is a Florida native. She was born in Miami and relocated to India with her parents when she was in middle school. After graduating from high school, she attended Purdue University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in English education in 2007. After graduating, she taught middle school language arts. In 2012, she moved back to Florida and continued to teach 8th grade language arts at Azalea Middle School, AMS. While at AMS, she obtained a master's degree in educational leadership from the University of South Florida. Same. After graduating, she worked as a district administrator for Pinellas County Schools. During this time, she was inspired to pursue her doctoral degree at the University of South Florida. In May 2024, she graduated with her Ph.D. in education. One of her professors is right back there in the green, Dr. Cheryl Rodriguez. Shameless plug. In August 2024, she started a role as a visiting professor of education at the University of Tampa. She is now an assistant professor at the University of Tampa. While education is her first love, Dr. Van Dyke has a fondness for community work, which she includes in her volunteerism and independent contracting efforts. The following are just a small part of that list. She co-founded the Green Book of Tampa Bay in 2019 with her friend Joshua Bean. Since 2016, she has been involved in work to get Black people more involved in the outdoors, from leading events to her filmmaking. She also has led many efforts to plan and install art and history exhibits, as well as planning community engagement around them. Dr. Van Dyke's hobbies include being in nature through hiking, biking, paddleboarding, traveling to different countries, cosplaying, and forcing her friends to cosplay. To cosplay. That's so true, though. To cosplay with her. Girl, she will drag you out there, child. You would. Watching nerdy TV shows and movies, listening to audiobooks, podcasts, and vinyl records, and spending countless hours texting, FaceTiming, and talking to her parents or her little brother and sister. Along with her titles, the one she is most proud of is being an aunt. Dr. Hillary Van Dyke. I
feel like that is a really long bio, but I also
You deserve it, girl.
updated a little bit. All right, y'all. First of all, thank you so much for coming to my talk. It's titled "We've Been Here: How Black Folks Lived, Worked, and Played Through Nature in Pinellas County." I'm Dr. Hillary Van Dyke, as Ashley said. I'm going to get a little bit into who I am, even though she's read a lot of it. But I'm a principal at Invincible Summer Enterprises, LLC. We do a lot of independent contracting related to education, as well as qualitative research subcontracting. We've talked a few times now about the Green Book of Tampa Bay, which does work to help Black artists have more equitable access to the art space in St. Pete and Tampa Bay. And then the thing that gives me a salary and health insurance is that I'm a University of Tampa professor of education. But I'm going to give you all a moment to talk about yourselves. I'm sure by now you've already shared the name, but I want you to talk for about 2 minutes on task answering these questions. What is your favorite way to recreate outside? And how does that activity make you feel? Now, the 2 slides I've put up so far have me on a mountain or something. It doesn't need to be that serious. Just what's something you like to do outside, and how does that make you feel? So let's do 2 minutes talking to your table partners on task. Go.
manta ray. It's amazing. I mean, you never see them. You see manatees, but never manta rays.
And how does being at the beach make you feel?
It always makes me feel both like I'm doing something good for myself, and there's no better place in St. Petersburg in the heat of the summer. You're just busy.
Thank you. What about someone in the middle? That's these three rows here.
Gardening. I like the garden. I have a botanical garden, and this year I grew 120 amaryllis throughout my yard, and I dig up some of the little pups and I grow them and give them away. I was just telling them I like to go around and I don't buy plants. I cut from other people's. Sorry. You know, as I walk in the neighborhood or wherever I'm at, I'm constantly doing that. I do regrowing, so I'll regrow onions, celery, and all that. So I just like gardening.
And how's gardening make you feel?
Like I'm achieving something, I'm free, I have control, and I have a bunch of friends. They listen to me. And they don't talk back.
Right.
They might look a little bit like I'm tired of talking. You know.
Thank you. Last but not least, someone on this side of the room.
Well,
Go ahead. I say camping. Camping, it makes me feel at peace, knowing that I've blocked out all the outside distractions, no technology, cell phones, and I'm just outdoors with people around me and nature. Just enveloping myself and all that just brings me peace.
Cool. Thank you. First of all, thank you all for sharing. One of the things that really drives me is these different feelings we're talking about is helping folks have similar experiences in the outdoors, but then also get to experience that feeling as well. So a little bit more about me as it relates to that is I do a lot of work related to getting folks outside. Personally, I am an outdoor adventure seeker, whether I'm in Tampa Bay or traveling abroad. I also lead tours out of the country, and any of those tours, there's always some sort of nature-based activity, generally more than one. I also am a Get Black Outside adventure curator, which sounds very exciting, but really I just organized some big black camping trips in Florida. And then in my former life, I was also an adventure guide for She Travels, which is an adventure, like an outdoor adventure excursion company. And I was a longtime volunteer outdoor Afro leader. So the reason that this sort of work is really important to me is because in my life, a lot of the time, I would be the only person who was doing the thing outside. So it would always just be me and white people. And so you start to believe, oh, I guess these are white people things to do, or is something wrong with me that I'm always the only one? So being a part of all that work has been nice to kind of help be a part of shifting that narrative, helping expose more folks to the outdoors, and then low-key, it also gives people to be outside with as well. Now, the other thing to think about as it relates to this conversation is if we think about history, we recognize that it isn't weird for black folks to be in nature, and that black people have always had to live, work, and play through nature. Especially if we think pre-European contact, I think that's fairly obvious, like you would have had to have lived off the land. But post-European contact, a lot of this narrative has shifted around who belongs outside for fun, who has access to land to grow food to eat, to grow food to sell. And so I think one of the things that happens if you dig into history, you see not only have we always been here, we're about that life, right? And we're successful at it, we have fun at it. And so I just really like to have this conversation and talk about a little tiny blip of history. Now, a few things to help you understand how this presentation is set up. Almost all the pictures are me in nature. I know. And I'm not doing that because I'm like obsessed with myself. I just like to have these photos as like inception to show you a black woman in nature doing the thing so we recognize that we belong there. The other thing is it is mostly in chronological order. It's about 150 years of Pinellas County history. It is not inclusive of every story I could tell, but it is the stories that I personally think are the most interesting. So with that, I think those are things I wanted to say before I got started. We will get going. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is in the early 19th century, indigenous people and fugitive enslaved people formed Seminole communities. And then we also had Cuban people and fugitive enslaved people setting up fishing camps. And many of these fishing camps were also in Seminole communities as well. So right away, we're seeing that black folks who were fleeing slavery came to this area, set up lives that required them to live on the land, live off the land. And we're talking about fishing camps. That's how we're eating. That's how we're making money. In the summer of 1821, and actually if we back up a little bit, the U.S. officially owns Florida by 1819, and they begin their formal occupation in 1821. In their formal occupation, they were raiding and burning Seminole settlements. None of these settlements were ones in Pinellas, but the message was sent to black folks that it was not safe. So many of them fled to the Keys and to the Bahamas. There were settlements in Tampa Bay that were impacted by this, but not necessarily in Pinellas. And about 300 black people were either re-enslaved or enslaved after being captured. So one thing to note about this period of time, have any of you heard of the First, Second, or Third Seminole War? All right, so a lot of times if we learn about the Seminole Wars, we learn about them as about just getting the land from Native Americans, but what it was really about is the fact that these Native Americans allowed enslaved people to live in their communities. So when the government took control of Florida, they wanted to get the enslaved people back. So really, the three Seminole Wars are like a precursor to the Civil War. But a lot of times the way we learn about it, you think it's just about the Native Americans, but it was really actually about slavery. Now we're going to move from thinking about these encampments to thinking about some black pioneers. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this one guy because it's a fascinating story. But the reason I think it's fascinating is when we talk about race, we theoretically understand that it's anthropological nonsense. So our ancestors, many eons ago, had to adapt to their climate. So that's all race is. Skin color, hair texture is just an adaptation to climate. But we have made it mean so much more than that. We've attributed it to people's intelligence, strength, this and that. But ultimately, it's a social construct that has had huge impacts on people's lived experiences. But this guy, I think, really shows you how complex this story about race is in the U.S. Also, some of you who know that I'm Haitian will also understand why I find him fascinating. So, Odette Philippe is generally referred to as the first permanent white settler in Pinellas County. His story is full of legends. He's from French nobility. He served with Napoleon. The settlement he started was called a white settlement, and one of his grandchildren is called the first white child born in Pinellas. All right, so I told you most of the slides were pictures of me. You're gonna get 2 slides that have pictures of Odette. All right, so some backstory about him. He was born in Saint-Domingue, which is now called Haiti. One of the accounts of someone writing about him said his coloring was similar to a house slave that they knew in Alabama. So it's pretty likely that he actually is the child of a white French military person and a Haitian woman who might have been enslaved. But when he came to the States, he made up all sorts of stories. And there is one text that gets into his story that was written in the 90s, but people in Safety Harbor don't ever talk about this part of this guy's history. So he goes from the Caribbean to the Carolinas to Florida, and in the 1830s relocates to Tampa Bay. Now, Tampa is, Cigar City. There's all that history there. Odette Philippe is actually the first person to bring the cigar industry to Tampa Bay. And in 1842, he acquires 160 acres of land under the Armed Occupation Act. And on this land, he develops a really successful citrus grove, and he actually grows the first grapefruit ever in Florida. And then again, because of his success with his citrus farm, he eventually gets inducted into the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame. His daughters and descendants marry into other pioneer families in Pinellas, particularly the Booths and the McMullins. So have you all heard of the McMullen Booth Road and all that? So we've got stuff named after some of these people that his family marries into. And in recent history, we have this very popular park in Safety Harbor called Philippi Park. So first of all, that drives me crazy, y'all. This man is French and Haitian. His last name is Philippe, but we say Philippi Park. Anyway, so Philippi Park is named after Odette Philippe. He's actually buried there. If you go, you can see his gravestone. And in 2020, during the Great Racial Awakening of the United States, there was a lot of conversation about renaming the park because Odette Philippe not only was a slave owner, but a slave trader. They did not, in the end, decide to sell the park. But one of the things that I find interesting about this is, I think I would say great-grandchild, I believe, was a Booth. So that's one of the people that was married into the Booth family. After President Lincoln was assassinated, one of his grandchildren gets named, one of his Booth grandchildren gets named John Wilkes. So this biracial, slave-owning, slave-trading man has someone in his family down the line named John Wilkes Booth, who's named intentionally after the person that killed Abraham Lincoln. I just think his story is the most American story ever because he, like anything you can think about the American dream, he came and did it, but all within this crazy conversation about race in Florida. A settler that had a more probably traditional sort of experience when settling in Pinellas is John Donaldson. So in 1868, he settles in Lower Pinellas. So if you remember, 1865, slavery ends. And so this is after slavery ends. A few years after moving here, he purchases 40 acres of land 1 mile north of what is now Lake Maggiore. And then again, same example of the land and nature being used to create a lot of success for him. So he grew sugarcane, sweet potatoes, had an orange grove, raised cattle and hogs. And then another thing to note to see his importance, in 1886, his name was one of the signatures on a petition to separate Pinellas and Hillsborough. That petition was not successful. However, but after he had died, that effort actually eventually was successful, obviously. And then I believe this is what Jason and Lola were going to share about. A couple years after John Donaldson purchases his land, we're going to travel up to North Pinellas and talk about sponge diving. Now, 1873, some turtlers from Key West discover a sponge field off the shore of Tarpon Springs. They come back with boats and sponge fishermen from the Bahamas and establish posts along the Anclot River. Now, in 1905, so like 30-ish years later, Anclot and Rock Island Sponge Company employed John Corcoran, recruits divers from Greece to come continue this industry. So in that year, about 1,500 Greek people migrated to Tarpon Springs to work the sponge docks alongside Bahamian divers. And the black folks working with them even are learning Greek so that they can communicate with their colleagues. And then after a while, it essentially becomes mostly just a thing that Greek people do. Have any of you been to the sponge docks? And you've seen some of the public history there? Did any of that history talk about black people starting the sponge industry? Yeah, if you visit Tarpon Springs, you will not learn anything about Bahamian sponge divers unless you decide to go to Rose Hill Cemetery, which is one of the largest black cemeteries in the whole state. It has a veteran buried from every major war that the U.S. has been a part of as well. But the way to find the sponge divers in that cemetery is to look for conch shells on their graves. But outside of that, you have to be like a history nerd that digs into archives. Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing, actually, this is the most important thing, y'all, okay? Bahamian sponge fishermen were free divers. which means no equipment other than their like thing to catch the sponges. So they're diving, holding their breath to the bottom of the seafloor to do this fishing. This outfit of mine, this is me at the Florida Aquarium, is a poor copy essentially of what the Greek sponge fishermen wore to do that diving. So I just think that's awesome that the Bahamians set this industry up, are literally just holding their breath for long periods of time underwater to fish, and then the Greeks come along and have to be like this to go sponge diving. All right, so a lot of this is kind of like early pioneer era, but the community continues to grow. So we see a booming citrus industry. We see the railway not only growing, but also being built. And then a lot of tourist resorts start to open. So there's a lot of work, especially work that's based in outdoor things, that draws African American families to the area. So they come from places like Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina looking for work. But one of the things that happens as more black people migrate to the area, Jim Crow segregation becomes further entrenched and codified into their experiences. So when you have like John Donaldson, who came in 1868, him and his wife Anna, all their kids, I think they had 14 children, went to school with white children. But by this point, there's essentially too many black people for that to be a thing, and they really start to separate where people live, where people go to school. Unless they're working, they're essentially not really allowed in white parts of town. And then, so you see this evidence of the community trying to keep people separate, but then also give them the opportunity to go outside and recreate. So for example, 1916, Mayor Al Lang creates a beach for black folks to have somewhere to go to the beach. And it's called South Mole, and it's near where Demon's Landing is. If you go to the Rowdy's Stadium and like look towards the water, it's kind of across the street from the parking lot there. However, white folks were upset that black people had to travel through their neighborhoods in order to go to the beach. So even though they built this beach in 1916, for like a decade after, they're still having conversations about where do we put this black beach. In the 1920s, Pinellas continues to develop. So the tourist industry just keeps growing, just keeps booming. So we start to see these mega hotels being built, ones that are definitely still standing. The Vinoy Hotel, the Big Pink Hotel downtown, the Don Cesar, the Big Pink Hotel on the beach, are all built amongst other ones. All segregated hotels, but if black folks are in the hotel, what are they doing? Right. So they would be there working, cleaning, serving, but we're not allowed to stay at the hotel. And even into the 40s and 50s, this hotel segregation thing is a huge issue, specifically in St. Pete, that leads to us losing MLB spring training because they won't let the players stay in the Vinoy. So eventually the team just leaves St. Pete altogether and doesn't do their spring training here at all. And then along with these hotels being built, we start to see a lot more bridges being built or rebuilt to connect different parts of the area because that growth keeps happening. Now, this is really a story of like black people or white people being tourists and going places, but of course, black folks also were traveling too. And in 1936, we have Victor Hugo Green developing what is called the Green Book. So it's the Negro Motorist Travel Guide Green Book. It's a long name. But it's published to help black people navigate a Jim Crow America, particularly so they know how far they have to drive till they can go to a gas station, so they know how much gas to pack with them, so they know how far they'll go before they can go to a hotel or a restaurant they can eat or sleep at. So then you're also packing food, just bringing everything with you to make sure that you can get to the next point that black folks are allowed to use. But I bring this up because one of the things that's also in the Green Book are things like campsites near national parks. So again, we're seeing that evidence that black folks are wanting to recreate in the outdoors. Now, Pinellas County just keeps growing. As you all know, we're still experiencing it now. And in that growth, we see this huge expansion of county parks, city parks, et cetera. This is a list of some of the parks that are county built, and you can see the year that it opened, and that can kind of give you a guess about whether or not it was segregated, or if it was segregated legally or segregated by custom, probably depends on the year. But for the most part, black folks are not allowed to go to these places. A lot of them were built in historically significant places. For example, y'all remember this name? Philippi Park, or yes, Philippe. Who said Philippe? Thank you. Yes. So we have Philippi Park, which is now, that's that land from Odette Philippe. That part of it has now turned into a county park, which is where his burial is. Fort DeSoto is a former fort that gets decommissioned and eventually becomes a park. So this is a list of county parks, but of course other parks and spaces were being built that black folks did not have access to. And so in the 50s, we really start to see people pushing back on this idea. Well, let me back up. People were pushing back before that, but a lot of the lawsuits that happen locally really start in the 50s to push back against these policies. And I just think this picture is funny. This is me in a cave in New Zealand fighting for my life. All right, anyway, now that that's out of the way. So 1954, Ralph Wimbish and members of the Civic Coordinating Committee challenged the Pasadena Golf Course's segregation policies. And then rather than integrate, the golf course gets sold and becomes a private golf course. The next year, continuing to look at these like public places that people are fighting for access. We have 1955, 10 members of that same committee attempt to go to Spa Beach without success, and then Dr. Fred Alsop helps them sue the city 4 months later. 2 years after that, so the city keeps appealing this court case, just back and forth, till eventually we get to the Supreme Court, who says, y'all, just integrate the pool. But instead of integrating the pool, the city of St. Pete continues to close the pool whenever black folks tried to swim in it. So fast forward to 1958, which is now 3 years after this first started, and we're still closing the pool, not abiding by the court ruling, rather than let black people swim there. And by 1958, the city actually takes money that was supposed to build a new black beach in the Gandy area and creates North Shore Pool, which essentially was like a white flight reaction to everything that was happening at Spa Beach. 1959, Spa Beach and Pool opened on an integrated basis. Personally, I feel like the thing that changed is the city administrator wasn't working there anymore, and he was the main person that was like closing the pool. And in this example, in the hotel example, you're seeing like places lose money over this like obsession with keeping things separate. So that's the end of my 150 years of black folks in nature in Pinellas, but I want to give you all a moment to talk. We're gonna have 2 more quick talk breaks, but the first one is just your quick reactions so far with your table group, reactions to information you heard, and then also what are you curious about exploring further. If you don't live in Pinellas, you have to talk about what you want to explore in your area as far as history goes. So speaking on task to your group mates, go. Table mates, table area. humans, welcome back. So this time I'm going to do the same thing, the 3 areas of the room, but I'd like to encourage someone different to share this time. And we'll start on this side of the room. Will someone share something that came up in your conversations?
Oh, my bad. You go by tables or you go by?
The whole side of the room, one of you.
Oh, okay. Well, once again, I realized where I heard about periodically, probably from you. But it stuck out to me because my grandfather's from the Bahamas, and so it made me feel proud. I was like, oh, Steph, look at that.
Nice.
So I feel like going down to the sponge docks and kicking some sponges. They started all this shit. But,
Yeah, there's like a historical marker too that basically starts at the 1903 or whatever, the early 1900s, where it talks about John Corkers and the Greeks, and it doesn't start before that. Someone in the middle, something you talked about, one of these 3 tables. Go ahead.
I was curious to know if, in order to utilize some of these recreational spaces, especially if it was a specific block of time so that there wasn't any sort of intermingling, if a lot of African Americans had to carry around papers. And if some of this was codified, what did that look like in the city's charter?
That sounds interesting. I don't know though. Sounds like an interesting rabbit hole for you in a future talk. Yeah, that's interesting. And can you, sorry, with the papers thing, what would the papers do?
So there's in a former life, when I was a little bit of a history nerd myself, but in Miami, there was City of Miami Beach had the same thing where they set up a blacks only beach. Prior to that, black people were allowed to utilize the beach, but they had to walk around with papers. It was think of it like your modern day card, but the card had all of your information on it, and so it was used for the police to keep track of you, to know where you were, because at that point in time, Miami Beach was also a sundown town. And so they were very diligent in making sure, we don't want you here, but we know we have to let you here, but we're also not going to make it easy for you to be here. And so knowing that that is a case that already existed in South Florida, I was curious if that was something that was perhaps made its way north as well.
Gotcha. I don't think so. Not that I've heard of. Wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think so. What about this side of the room? The Dr. Cheryl Rodriguez, everyone.
So this is really interesting, Hillary, because it made me think about growing up during the Jim Crow years, which I did. And my father, who was a civil rights lawyer, was always trying to cross barriers so that he could play tennis. He loved to play tennis. So there was one park in Tampa where we could go and play, and there were golfers and tennis players, and that was the one place where we could go. But my father realized that in Tampa there were other places that didn't allow black people to come, so he sued them, and then and won the lawsuit. So he was able to play where he wanted to, and then he encouraged other black youth to play tennis.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons this topic fascinates me, because so many of the lawsuits we hear about are kind of these, just not generally about the right to recreate and the right to be outside, or even just to find joy, like in Atlanta. These women who sued to be able to, I think it's Fox Theater, one of the is Fox Theater in Atlanta, to be able to just sit wherever they want versus having to sit up on the balcony, but because they wanted to watch opera like everyone else. So there's all these other just little indignities that were happening in those moments that people like your dad had to fight for. All right, thank you all for sharing. So one thing, again, I think the history conversation is very important, but these 2 documentaries that I wrote and directed that came up, I think Wayne was talking about them, they, to me, I think kind of draw a through line from that conversation conversation to this one. If you have like an hour or less than an hour in your day and have interest, go to youtube.com/@ProfessorVanDyke. We've got 2 documentaries. This one on the left, Splash of Color, Getting Black in the Water, is about folks who do work to get Black people involved in aquatic sports. We also have some stars of the documentary here, actually. We've got these 4, and Jason are all actually in the documentary as well. And then on the right is Diversifying Conservation, and this one looks at a project where Black folks were involved in helping to add to the oyster reef at Philippi Park. So again, here's that part coming up again. So definitely check them out if you have interest. But the one thing with the one on the left is it talks about modern day stuff, but it also ties history into it, and then starts to think about conservation, because you might love to recreate in a space, but doesn't matter if it gets so polluted or so harmed that you can't go to it anymore. And then our second documentary, or my second documentary, is looking at ways that you can actually do something about the conservation story. All right, so the last forced conversation you're going to have with your table group is 2 questions. So thinking about the history, the conversations you've had today, the fact that we've got some documentaries that further the conversation. What does all of this inspire for you? And what are you thinking about exploring in your future? Again, 3 minutes on task, go. Huh? Oh. Do you need to say words? Oh. so that was actually my timer, so that's perfect timing. For this last question, this is now a third person from each part of the room, okay? But you heard that we don't have that much time left, so don't go too long with this. But someone on the left side of the room, actually let's start with the middle, because I keep not starting with you. Someone in the middle of the room, one of these three, one thing that came up in your conversation that you want to share with the group. Go ahead.
Because this was about recreation, I am curious now, where does the stereotype that black people can't swim come from?
Yeah. Did you have something? Oh, I saw you tap her like you were trying to make her talk. Nope. All right. Someone over here.
It just makes me want to interrogate everything.
Yeah.
What am I missing? What's being withheld? What's being lied about?
Yeah.
Reading between the lines.
Yeah.
So just kind of learn more, dig more.
Okay. What about this side of the room? Last but not least.
We kind of spend as much time outside as we can, but this really inspired me to just take a moment to really appreciate the fact that we are able to do all the things that we're able to do, because not too long ago we weren't able to do all of those things. And I am looking forward to, we live in Lutz, so north of Tampa, so I'm looking forward to attending some more B.E.A.T. I think that was the name of the group.
Yeah.
More of
And I was gonna say, you'll get the email since you've done the Eventbrite. You'll see the next time there's an event. Pretty much all of them, except for one or two, will always be in Tampa at the C. Blythe Andrews Library. So as soon as we get the next date, we'll let you know. All right. Oh, that was everybody. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for taking some time out of your life to come learn about Black history, my favorite topic. Please keep in touch. Most of you already know me, so I'm gonna still put the slide up here. You take a picture of it. We've got some stuff for middle school teachers. We've got some stuff. I have some stuff for middle school. But thank you.
Everybody up front. We've never done this before, so let's do it for the first time today.
Group photo.
Quick group photo before they kick us out.
Recommendation is using some AI videos.
Thank you. Do you scuba dive?
I'm a scuba school dropout, but I have scuba dived.
Okay.
And
My friend
technically still
dives.
can.
My friend who dives is in your movie.
Oh, who?
Ariana Drew.
With the, does she have long dreads and is she light skinned? Oh, no, she might be one of the B-roll people.
She goes on outings with black people who scuba dive.
Okay.
Are we supposed to?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Oh, we've got some more folks. Can I switch with you so I can be behind the laptop?
Yeah.
Trying to hide this little pooch.
Oh, here we go. I'm good. Nice to see you. I can go dark.
Right.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All three say history. 1, 2, and 3.
History.
Perfect. Great job. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I like how you keep the audience engaged by asking.
No, like they're really cool. I love